Yeah. If there's questions you want, put them in the chat.
Hi everyone, how are you? Hey Ian,
Yeah,
hi Optics.
We're blessed.
Good.
As Amma Shadi says, we're blessed. She keeps correcting
me. I like that.
We're blessed. She broke it down to me one time. A couple of people have broken it down. So yeah, we're blessed.
All right. So here today to talk about this next Come We Grow, which has turned out to be, for me, a very a meaningful one, and one that's really made me do some serious reflection, actually, more than I thought it would do as somebody who's part of the team facilitating. So I'll introduce myself and tell you why that's the case. Let's start with introductions. So my name is Zena Edwards, and I'm known as a poet, but my work, it really involves a lot more than just writing poems and performing them. It's a lot of project development, a lot of mentoring, using poetry as a device to explore things around mental health and well-being. And now I'm really advocating for nature and for climate and environmental activism, environmental justice. And this particular Come We Grow has come at a really interesting time. It's come at autumn. And I'm really interested in how nature teaches us about ourselves, about our connection to the earth, and how there's something to learn in terms of ancestral wisdom. So how our ancestors connected to the earth as well. That's why I'm really keen about this Come We Grow and the kind of questions that it's been raising for me. And who'd like to go? Yeah, why not? Let's do that. Yeah. Who'd like to go next?
Over to Michael.
I'm Optics Hamilton. I'm an astrologer, and I have a garden which I grow my own vegetables as well, and I do community work as well also. So as an astrologer, wanted to really look at the cosmic cycles of where we're at and how we tie inside with the cosmic cycles to do with the autumn cycle, which ties into Samhain or Halloween or Hallows Eve or All Hallows or Day of the Dead or All Souls Day or All Saints Day. But there's phenomenon all around the world. And it ties into the Wiccan calendar, which kind of alternates every kind of 7.5 weeks, there or thereabouts, to another cycle. So you got seven, you got the breakdowns of, there's 8 cycles actually, 8 cycles into 52 weeks. So it's less than 7 weeks, actually. It's a little bit more like six weeks and a bit. So what that means is that we're at a stage now where everything's dying in nature and everything's returning back to the soil. And in our family lineage, it's also like an ancestral time where ancestrally we raise up the dead, if you like, or venerate the dead, or give homage to our ancestors that has passed. So the skull as a motif is something that represents immortality or just death, or the skeleton represents something that is immortal of us as a permanence, of all time, if you like.
Nice.
So that's that.
And that's really good segue, because literally Amashade, while you ended, Amashade entered as well, and we've got someone called Marcia entered as well. So yeah, my name is Ian Solomon Kawal, aka KMT, the Freedom Teacher. Welcome, Marcia. Welcome, Amashade. So I run a project called May Project Gardens, and the various kind of elements that have emerged from that, I now call it much more an ecosystem. And I suppose I called it a community ecosystem. And I think the main thing that runs through all my work is, how do we connect? How do we reconnect with nature for personal, social, and economic gain. That is it in a nutshell. And I think it's really interesting that, you know, kind of Zena instigated this, kind of presented this topic. And in the process of on this journey, I experienced two quite personal deaths, professional and personal deaths. So I think for me, it's really about just, you know, just one kind of how do we engage with death in a or the, you know, the cycle, life and death, how do we engage in it and how do we honor it? And then also just kind of like, yeah, I think that's the main thing. How do we engage with it? How do we honor it? And, you know, how do we put it into the context of us in the world? You know, because we have this massive celebration of life, but yet we seem to have a very different, not saying all of us, but there's a very different approach to death. And why is that? This is kind of questions that I'd like to explore and look at, especially in light of actually working in nature a lot and seeing life and death on a daily basis as well. So that's me. Over to Amashade, if you're vocal. Amashade, your mic is not on.
Network apparently.
Okay.
Amashade just left a message.
Okay.
Yeah,
fantastic. All right. Well, welcome, Marcia. If you'd like to leave any questions in the chat, please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. That would be really great. You know, tell me where you've come from, or as much as you want. You know, what brought you here, and if you have any questions, and if it resonates with you as you go along, please feel free to do that, and we'll respond to them accordingly as well. So, well, Amashade, how about you type in some stuff in the meantime, and we'll keep moving. How does that sound? And then we can kind of just, for those who can't see the chat, we can basically just announce what you said in the chat or read it out so everyone can kind of hear what we're doing. Can I give you back to Zena? Is that okay?
Sure, no problem. So this Come We Grow, we're talking about the whole concept of celebrating life and death. And my approach to this has been to really think about the concept of nature, and it's when you really think about it, is quite a brutal approach to death. I think I posted in one of our promo campaigns is how we enjoy the leaves turning gold. You know, autumn is a time of year for us where we think, okay, summer's over. We're starting to think about how we're going to keep ourselves warm and wrap up, etc. But actually, all the beautiful colours that we see when we're walking in the park is actually nature shutting down and killing off all of these leaves that have absorbed chlorophyll, absorbed all of this, like the poisons and toxins in the air, and turned it into fresh air for us, absorbed all of this light, done the process of photosynthesis, and has let all of these leaves go, drop to the ground, so that it can go into a state of deep, deep, deep rest. And my approach to this particular Come We Grow is to talk about radical rest. And I was just speaking to my mum. I'm at my mum's house right now over lunch today. And, you know, she was asking me, what's this whole talk about? And I was saying to her, you know, this is about radical rest. And she was like, well, what's radical rest? And I was like, it's a state of just allowing yourself to be without feeling as if you have to be productive. Are you a productive human being, or are you are you contributing to this kind of capitalist, extractivist, you know, existence? I mean, even the thought about extractivism, how are we extracting energy from ourselves all the time, putting it out, digging deep to when we're out on our last legs, but digging deep to actually provide for our boss, or how our identity is based on the things that we think we own or the things that we make and create, when actually a state of deep rest is allowing yourself to walk slowly in the park, for example, without necessarily having a destination, without the whole thing of like, oh, I'm resting now. There should be no anxiety. It should be just a state of just being. So the concept of radical rest is like taking a look at all the different ways that we can experience fatigue, for example. Like we can experience fatigue by being in a constant state of anxiety. you know, anxiousness, which is about, again, like, how am I a productive human being? How am I being judged? Am I judging myself? So radical rest is about allowing yourself to not necessarily just have a self-care regime. I think that's definitely something that we can have in terms of how are we taking care of ourselves, making sure we are getting enough rest. But rest is also about how we're resting our minds. How are our minds at rest? How are our bodies able to be in a state of relaxation where we don't have high levels of cortisol running through our bodies, rushing through our bodies? How are we also allowing the idea of how our forebears used to rest, if they had opportunities to rest, for especially people of color who have, and people of African descent, or just people of color who've had the colonial experience? How did our forebears experience rest, or did they? But I know that there's a level of what I consider to be the stress of the colonial experience means that there's high levels of cortisol running through the body, because we would be in a state of fear or of anxiety or state of terror, because, you know, colonial being a terrorizing system. So again, I just think, I'm just thinking of the many ways that we should be thinking about how nature can inform us about rest, how it informs us about how things die and how we lay things to rest, and how our forebears would have experienced rest. I guess I'd like to ask Ian, Michael, Optics, you know, how do you see this whole concept of rest, or even how you see death as a form of release and letting go of things and letting things die?
We're being so well behaved, aren't we? I love it.
Normally we're like tumbling over each other.
Exactly. You know what I mean? Everyone's been so courteous. Like, I'm not sure. It's like that game, isn't it? That, you know, who goes. For me,
maybe I should, let me just, go for it.
Yeah, no, for me, I think it's really important. I think it's because it's a really challenging dichotomy to work with. We're in this capitalism society, which, irrespective of whether we agree with the work ethic, in order to succeed and grow, it does take a bit of work, you know, like in any kind of aspect, even in your spiritual growth. You know, you can just sit on a hillside for the rest of your life, but that's not really going to get you, in my mind, the real spiritual enlightenment that you need. You have to go to those places where you're going to get challenged and pushed and be uncomfortable. So there is definitely that sense of kind of, there is definitely a work ethic, but then it can, as you said, lead to burnout. And I think we've all experienced that very often, particularly working in the community, because when you're working in the community, you're also working with people that have probably experienced the oppressive nature of the society, capitalist society that we live in, and the impacts of that. And the thing with particularly with my work, it's so subtle, but it rears its head in so many different ways. So many different ways to, you know, young people that have, I'm just sweeping through, young people that have, you know, real issues in terms of actually the trauma they faced, particularly as a result of lockdown, and, you know, mental health as a result of lockdowns. It's not just lockdown, but these issues were there, but they've been exacerbated as a result of lockdown, through to corporates who I engage with and looking at their kind of history as an institution and challenging that as well. So I think it's really interesting to see, you know, when you're trying to, I hate these cliches, but when you're trying to grow, I was about to say make the world a better place, but that's cliche. When you're trying to grow, no, let's call it like when we're trying to make, when we're trying to humanize society. That's the one I'm going to go with. When we're trying to humanize society, you come up with a lot of backlashes, and that's been my experience. And I think it will continue to be my experience doing this type of work. So this notion of rest is always something that I kind of always struggle with, because I want to rest sometimes, but I know if I rest too much, you know.
Right.
So, yeah.
I think we'd be wise to go with the ebb and flow of, like, this is an inward time. This is like where we become more insular. It's also a time where we're not generating outward expression, or we're not being generative in terms of the other side of the coin. When we're in spring, it's like now it's time to be inward, more to be reflective, to kind of assess everything that's happened in the last, say, 6 to 7 months or so, and then go back and then replan and re-strategize what it is that you want to do in creative or plans or business or whatever aspects of your life that you need to refine, and go back and reflect inwardly. And you know, we've had a lot of time to do that with this lockdown, so we've collectively been in the death phase collectively for a year and a half, really. Collectively with this whole stuff, where we was forced to be inward and forced to think about who we are, what we're doing, and just stop and take time and reflect, and to just connect and be insular. And that's what this time of the year is. And it represents like going into the underworld. We are going into the underworld. The sun is going into the belly, if you like. And we're going into a cycle of a deeper state of darkness. And to be reconciled and to be one with darkness, and to understand that it's important to understand who you are and how you tie into an ancestral line that you tie into in terms of an unfolding story as well. So that's how we connect with our ancestors, that we fit into the grand scheme of things, where we are unfolding story in this whole narrative of our family lineage, and we're playing a role, and how we connect with our ancestors lets us kind of be the representative of them, of our ancestors here in this time, and they are representing us here in the ethers, in the spirit world. So this is where these two planes collide, between spirit and earth plane, earth and spirit, and the veil is known to be the very thin point of the year. So that we are connecting with our ancestors who may not be easy to contact, especially if it's gone past, 2, 3, 4 generations, and we don't have a photographic image of them to connect with. Like, this is a time where it's very easy to connect with ancestors that may not be easy to connect with as well. So this is what they call a portal in the calendar of the ancients.
It's really interesting what you're saying, because I was having a conversation the other day about Afrofuturism. And the question of Afrofuturism came up because of a couple of artist friends of mine, and one of them's a photographer, and he does this really kind of like out there kind of photography, like with special effects. It's beautiful work. His name is Benji Reed. And I was thinking, well, actually, when we think about Afrofuturism, if time is not linear, then for our ancestors who are jumping time, contacting us, trying to stay in contact with us, if you have that belief system where your ancestors are around you, or you make offerings to the ancestors, and your memory of them gives them energy, if we're in contact with them, then what they wanted for their lives or what they wanted for future generations, which is us, they want us to feel as free as they probably would not have, well, they obviously would not have had, because they would have had that colonial experience. And how for them, evolution of the lineage would be about our sense of freedom, how free we are in our minds, how free we are in our abilities to express ourselves, how free we are in our ability to experience abundance, to move from a space of sovereignty and empowerment. I think this is what our ancestors would have wanted and have dreamed for us. And how are we, almost recognizing that this is the work that we could or should be doing, that should with a very small s, that we could be doing, and how that is definitely a part of our growth. And not just as a people, I'm speaking obviously as somebody from African descent, but I think as a species, like how are we moving the consciousness of the species, of humanity forward, and how are we maintaining our connection to something greater? And I think this is why something like, Halloween is speaking about something to do with a higher consciousness, not just, for us to like get pumpkins and dress up and like, with makeup and look like Freddy Krueger or whatever people are doing. No disrespect, so people are having fun, but I just think, as you were saying, Michael, this is a time of year where the veil is thin, where we can have access to speak to our people.
Yeah. I mean, that all comes that all comes from how we disconnect to the past, and how things just become muted or mutated into time, where we just basically, it becomes a thing where, it becomes fearful, or it becomes something that has denotations of being evil and all this other stuff. I mean, yeah, I think that before all of that we, this time of year as a sacred point, that got marked by different names, and All Souls, All Saints, Day of the Dead, Hallows Eve, Samhain. They all tie into a global ethos of this time of year, where we light up the grave, and we go and we pay homage to those who have passed in our lineage, and dear family, friends as well. I mean, has anybody had any personal experience with the Day of the Dead that they'd like to share in this time, in this little window of time?
And I'd say the concept of Day of the Dead, the celebration of the ancestors, for me, is a constant thing with Maypole Gardens. So Maypole Gardens was created as a result of the passing of my mum. And so that is a constant, I think one of the things I find really interesting with my family was this kind of dialogue about them wanting to get a grave for my mum. And I was a bit like, why am I going to get a grave when I've got a project, I've got a living, my ecosystem that is kind of, happening and is live, and you want to have an ornament. And I think it's fine how everyone engages with their ancestral and their transition of their ancestors. But for me, I wanted to honor her life. Do you know what I mean? And for me, having the gravestone wasn't what I wanted, and I might revisit it, and I might say, okay, yeah, that's something I wanted. But I think it was more important to actually kind of honor her life, because actually her life wasn't great. Do you know what I mean? And actually, as a result of her life not being great, I think I've managed to really do some really amazing stuff, which has helped people to have a better life. And I think what we're talking about, that inhibiting the darkness, is something really interesting. There's a real fear, and there's a real cultural demonization of that work. You know, if you mention, for example, voodoo, you could say, the Mexican equivalent, I forgot the name, forgive me, memory's bad, Day of the Dead. But if you say voodoo, people are like, oh, straight away, but actually there's something really important about the ownership of the sense of death and darkness. And the reason why I really like it is because obviously I work in the garden, I work with nature, and I haven't really been in the garden a lot, but today I did, and I was like really, really excited by, you seeing all the decay and the leaves disappearing, and I was like, oh, like, you know, because it's constantly happening. But yet somehow we've become so disconnected. We think that we're the only ones that can experience death. But even walking on the planet, we're killing, like, you know, we don't even know how many species we're killing on a daily basis. You know what I mean? So I think it's really interesting for me to kind of really use May Product Gardens a way to kind of really bring, really bring this sense of death and life into an everyday context, not just a one-off instance. And I think Emma Sade's got a hand up, and I'm hoping we can hear her. Oh yes, we got.
I'm not sure if this is going to work. I hope you can all hear me.
Hey, loud and clear, yeah.
Yeah, good. I'm kind of frightened to even try and put on the video because I don't want to break the connection and the flow. But yes, loving the vibe. I really wanted to follow on from what Ian was saying because, like he said, for me, dealing with this time of year, it's a constant for me, you know, in terms of focusing on ancestors and our relationship with ancestors and our relationship with what's beyond the veil, and honoring how that shows itself in nature and taking the teachings and the learnings from nature that inform us and guide us in terms of how to interact with this interesting transition and shedding and stretching and kind of going deep into the unseen, the unknown. A lot of the conversations I'm hearing, and because we're talking about this time of year, you know, and a lot of conversations, this word spookism just keeps flashing up in my mind, where, you know, we're taught to be spooked by it all because that's a way of them being able to keep it hidden from us. And it's also, I think, in my experience, because it is a time of the thinning of the veil, it's also that time when you really get present to ancestral calling. You know, they are calling, they actually want to interact with us. They want to have a connection, and our interpretation of that can be spooked as well. And we can see it as like something that is to be wary of, rather than allowing the nature of it and the naturalness of it to flow through us. Because it is unknown, therefore it takes us out of our comfort zone of being able to interact in a known way. So whatever our interaction is going to be different, and it is individual, and it is very personal as well. And it's also a collective, because I really do feel the energy of the Ma'afa. I really do feel the energy of the Western witch hunts. I feel the energy of the Aborigines and I feel those energies on the global level of the voices that need to be heard. and also healing the personal family karmas, the ancestral karmas, and repairing those communication pathways. So yeah, I'm very, very interested in that conversation with the ancestors, and getting it so that we're more clear about it. It is a very sensitive time, as you brought up before, Zena, and it does take energy, you know. But it also shows us as well where our kind of spiritual muscle needs developing.
Yeah.
You know, because yes, it does take energy. I'm not saying it's for everybody, yet the work needs to be done. And, you know, we're all here because we've been called to do the work. So, you know, it's kind of iron sharpen iron type of thing. And we kind of feed each other and support each other in that growth and holding that space, because it is a serious holding, you know. And I do feel that energy that we spoke of, the nurturing, the acknowledging, you know, I'm really into energy balancing and realignment, because I do feel that if the energy is off key, then of course it is going to be, you know, you're going to interpret that as an imbalance, as a agitation or a discord of some kind, you know. So when it is in alignment and you're able to manage that, then yeah, it's then the story can really be felt, and it can be told, and it can, you know, be expressed. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of contribute to the discussion in that way, because it's the beyond the veil, making that communication at this special time of year, which is celebrated globally. So we know it's not Halloween, right? You know, it's Hallows Eve. You know, it is a sacred time. So gaining that sacredness back, and being able to support people to interact with it on whatever way they need to.
I love everything that you said there, and there's things that are jumping out, like the whole concept of the spiritual muscle for me, and how we hold space for people to flex that as a collective, to flex that spiritual muscle. And what you was talking about with the interaction of the known way, and the energy of the Ma'afa, and I'm writing stuff down. I'm writing this down. The energy of the Ma'afa, the energy of the indigenous wounding, and the communication of pathways that we're creating. What's the witch hunts? The witch hunts like fascinate me. Nobody talks about the fact that over that period of time, the Dark Ages, like 3 million women, 3 million women,
unbelievable.
Murdered. It's unbelievable. 3
and
million
men.
women
it's
murdered.
Not just women. It's the healers. It's the healers.
But I mean, yes, the healers. All of them, and all of that knowledge that went based on the fact of their knowledge of the medicine and the magic. Not the medicine, the medicine and the healing properties and the energy of the earth. They were just channelers of this energy. They were able to channel it, funnel it. But what really stuck out for me with what you were saying was going back to the concept of rest. If you're constantly in action, moving, agitation is the word, in a state of agitation, you're not still enough to hear the calling. You're not still enough to receive the downloads that your ancestors are trying to give you. You're not still enough to be able to hear, you know, to have a different form of listening. We think we listen with our ears. For me, because I just off of the other thing, that other work that I do, or the contribution and the offering I like to make to Can We Grow is the tarot work, and how tarot reading has become such a massive part of my spiritual practice. It's become a very efficient communication tool directly between me and my ancestors. So I use the tarot pretty much every day. I might use it 3 or 4 times a day just to ask questions. And I'm not leaning on bits of paper with pretty pictures on them to solve the problems of my life. I know that there are opportunities to give voice to my ancestors who I know are with me and have been. I'm in the family home, right? This is my mom's home. And in this room was where I felt connection with my ancestors on so many different levels, from the age of like 14 in this house. And Hermitage Road, which is up the road, was the age of 9 when I first had my first interaction with spirit, like when the veil was thin, when I had my first interaction with spirit. So I know my folks have been around me. I don't know my ancestors. I don't really know my family line. It's just family lines too tough. It's always just been me and my mom and my grandfather. That's it. So I don't really know too much of my ancestral line. I don't have any images. I don't have any, nothing that speaks to my actual lineages of being of Caribbean descent from the island of St. Kitts and Nevis. I don't know my father. I never knew my father. He was an American. That's as much as I know. It's not a bad thing. It's just one of those things, and I've accepted that. But the point is that there's this energy that's around, and because I was a quiet child, and I've continued that quietness, that I felt able to hear and feel the energy of my people around me. And this is why I'm really advocating for rest, because rest enables you to do that listening, to be able to hear where you're being calmed, where you're being told everything is okay. Because I think sometimes we're so caught up in the ego. The West is always so individualistic and so much about the ego that, it's me, everything comes from me. I'm the source of everything. I'm the source of everything I produce. I'm the one who knows everything, living from the head up, when actually our heart and our gut and our bodies, our fantastic radars to be able to pick up on all this other energies and messages and storytelling that's coming at us, or that's available to us to tap into, for us to have contented and abundant lives. Contented with, in relation to the fact that we have, COVID happening, but give us advice on how to navigate these spaces when it does get difficult, when we're feeling down, feeling as though we can't go on. There's this kind of support network that's available to us, to our people, but we have to be still enough to listen. So this is why I'm advocating rest at this moment in time. That's my little rant.
Okay.
It's like this symbiotic relationship that's happening simultaneously is we have a support network, but they also have a support network through us. So that relationship is important both ways,
Because there's work that they had to do when they were here. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and we're still their representative.
Nice. Yeah, man. I definitely want to pick up on that the two things what Michael was saying, Optics was saying, and Amashadi about that spiritual muscle, because I was literally faced with the proposition of closing down May Project Gardens a couple of months ago, 15 years of work, and just like almost heartbroken by that prospect and all this work. But you know what? It's probably the best thing to happen, because actually I'm resting for the first time in 15 years. Like everyone knows the May Project Gardens, my space is open, there's activities. It's been a real space at Hive. Literally, it's been a hive. And actually, for the first time, I'm resting. And I was talking earlier about, in the process of resting, I'm having to let go and trusting the ancestors to guide me into this new world. And it's mad, because I think I've spoken before about water, and I'm in Bristol, like I'm based in Bristol now. I'm working with all these places, and it just dawned on me what's symbolic about Bristol: slavery, the ports, and it's interesting that I'm going to these places and I'm actually being more invested in those spaces. And I just think exactly what Zena was saying as well, this sense of listening with not just with our ears, but with our guts, with our hearts. This radar is very much what's kind of made me navigate up until this point. And I think what was happening with May Project Gardens is that that navigation was getting confused, it's getting cloudy. I wasn't able to trust that. Do you know what I mean? And actually, the shutting downs actually made me go, oof, retune to it, reconnect with that radar, which is really, for me, comes through nature. That's the way I really connect with my ancestors. So one of the things I really like is the animals, the plants that kind of communicate and what do they mean. And, you know, more recently, I've been seeing a lot of dragonflies. And I'm like, wow, like, what are these dragonflies? And I put a post on Instagram and I was like, I'm seeing a lot of them. Like in all my years, I haven't seen so many dragonflies in my life. I'm like, what's going on? So obviously started researching, looking into them. And, you know, if you look at them from a distance, they look beautiful. When you go up to them, they're ugly. they're some ugly creatures,
Really?
man. Yeah, get close up to them. They don't look nice. Trust me, from a distance, when they're flying around, they look beautiful. But this is the beauty about dragonflies. This is they represent a deep oxymoron. Thank you very much for that. A deep oxymoron. Also, the dragons, in terms of actually being one of the most powerful creatures, but yet a fly gone. Do you know what I mean? Like literally. So it's really interesting to see where I'm at. And it's actually, I suppose for me, it's about the transcendence of being able to transcend, but being immersed in this sense of having that dragon power, but knowing at any moment that can happen and working with that. So I think it's really interesting from that perspective for me. So yeah, spiritual muscle, man, I definitely feel that right about now.
Hearing that as well, and how we're holding space for everybody to flex it, I think, because it can be like I said, for me, I felt quite vulnerable doing this, to be quite honest. But Michael, yeah, please.
Can I say something about water again? Just you talked about being vulnerable, and I feel I should just be really vulnerable with you all now, and just say that I was made practically homeless by the flooding that happened in July. I've been out of my home since then, so hence it's been quite a challenge to work, and it's been quite a challenge to make the adjustments that I've needed to make to flow with everything that's been going on. My children were confused by me initially, because when the flood happened, my first response was to thank Mama Waters, you know, where the house is literally being flooded, and I'm singing praises to my ancestors and the waters, and they were really like confused by that. But I just knew that regardless of what happened, you know, you have to just thank nature for whatever nature offers to you, because we don't understand the fullness of it. So that was interesting. And sort of 2-3 months later, still being out of our homes and still being very displaced, having to rest, having to stop, literally, and just really ground ourselves as a family, grounding myself, really looking after my nature, self-care, meditation, really grounding and being held by nature, not my will, the greater will be done, and actually, really living and breathing that. And just holding the balance, and as you said, Zena, just checking in every day, every moment, with whatever spiritual tools are to hand, because initially I didn't have anything, but it's like slowly I just kind of, getting present to what is really important, what is the main spiritual tool, how can I, in my constant movement and constant not knowing where I'm going to be. Am I going to be at the hotel? Am I going to be at this place? Where am I going to be? having, you know, so I can't, you know, at home I have my big shrine and I had all my tools there and everything. But when you're displaced in that way, you know, you just got to walk with what you need, what you need. So I've kind of scaled everything down to this little pouch. And it's really making me see how I can move, really.
That's incredible.
You know, just see how I can move. So I really think it's important that you all know where I'm at, physically and emotionally, very stretched, but also very open. So the work that we're doing here, I'm really honored to be doing this work with you all, because for me, it's the one time of year that I really feel it's important to do this work. So I haven't been doing any work. This is going to be the work that I do, because it's about ancestors. It's about nurturing, as you said, the resting and building that spiritual muscle, because the healing of our collective family, our collective village, it is happening, but there's still work to be done there. So for me, this is like, yeah, let's do this work. This is the work. This is it. So yeah, just wanted to share that. You know, when I come next week, I'll be coming with my children, and just offering. We're gonna offer something for, you know, whatever is present. I can't really say too much about it because I'm not sure what will present itself in the moment, but it is going to be about, you know, that veil and how we can hold each other in such a way that it's fifth dimensional now as well. But, you know, we don't have to be in the same room actually. You know, we can actually just send that vibration to each other without, you know, just with the word sound and the call. So when you want your energy, call, you know, and, you know, we can all support each other in that way.
Thanks for sharing that, Mashade.
Can I just very quickly, Michael, because optics, sorry, just the whole concept of displacement, because our ancestors who came to the UK would have been displaced. There would have been a whole concept of displacement. That's why our ancestors have got something to tell us about this time. And I just feeding into what you were talking about with water and giving gratitude to Mami Wata and the elements, again, that's nature and paying homage to the elements. And then that feeds into that's why I was thinking, this would be great for optics to speak about archetypal ancestors, the concept of the archetype of ancestors. Yeah,
that's that's a strange connection, because water, home, ancestors, they're all closely connected archetypally as well, actually. So there's a connection there, definitely. And I could feel that as well, because I'm going through some stuff with the home as well. So and then archetypally, you know, because I'm an astrologer, I look at my family lineage, but I also look at my family lineage through the line of birthdays and astrological archetypes that run through. And there's this pervading kind of Cancer energy, Cancer moon, Cancer ascendant, or Cancer, a lot of Cancer energy in the family. And on my mum's side, that, you know, the archetypally, that's Yemaya. That's my common ancestor on my mum's side. On my father's side, it's like a Papa Legba. So each one of us has also an archetype that we connect to ancestrally, whether it's Oshun, Obatala, Olokun. You know, all of these archetypes are kind of bust down to a common ancestor, that if we know who we are, what our mission is, being in touch with that common ancestor can also strengthen our connection with our lineage and who we are, and our spiritual kind of force, if you like. So that's also a real kind of good thing to tap into as well. Who you are, who is your common ancestor through your ancestral lineage. If you know that, and if you can find that out, that's really good.
So Michael, question for you, bro. I think, you know, this is what's been really great about, it's funny because lockdown, prior to me Project Cardin's closing, I kind of sensed that was going that way anyway. So as you know, we've been doing a lot of healing sessions at the space, you know. So it's been really important for me to kind of, you know, the various people, you know, Vicky, who else is there? Just kind of Vicky, what's her name? Victoria, just loads of different healers that have come, Susan, there's loads of different people that have been coming to kind of just help me on that journey. But what ways, so you mentioned quite a few names, and I think I don't want to assume that everyone who's going to listen to this understands everyone's and all these concepts. Do you want to kind of give us maybe some just like maybe one or two people that you mentioned, just break down who they are and what they represent, just so we can kind of, you know, just get into that as well. So you mentioned, you know,
well, they're fluent throughout all different cultures. It's just that we got different names for them in
so could you give me
their different name, in Celtic mythology their different name again. So
you can pick one, for example, maybe, and just give us a breakdown of like what that person does or that spirit. So just to help us kind of like, but don't like, so we might not all know what these people do. So I'm just saying.
yeah. So like Yemaya would be like Great Mother. She'll be also Virgin Mary Mother.
Perfect.
So she's the archetype of the mothering energy, the nurturing energy, but also we come from the Great Mother. You know, it's dark matter has more pervading energy in the universe than dark energy. So we being given birth from this great celestial mother, this great celestial archetype, if you like, that nurtures us. But you know, there's a dual side to nature with water, and you know, she can be both sides. You know, it's worse to get beat by your mom than your dad. Because that emotion comes out with that belt, man, and you know, in that sense. So, and then you know, you have Papa Legba, who's also Hermes, who's also you know, help me, Zena.
Legba.
Yeah, Papa Legba, Hermes.
I don't know all of his.
Tahuti, you see, and
but I know his energy.
And different archetypes in different parts of the world. So basically, you know, Anansi as well. So basically, these archetypes are running through mythology, but also these mythological stories are telling us about who we are, going on our great journeys of our own hero story, if you like. That we have to, things that we have to master, things that we have to conquer, tools that we have to use. Ogun is a warrior deity that deals with more like a war, you know, warfare.
But he's also lightning, right? That's the thunder and lightning. Ogun is thunder and lightning. Am I right?
Abatala is also lightning as well. So yeah,
that will be it. I mean, I'm much more familiar with Yemaya because for me, Yemaya, she's also the goddess, the Orisha of the ocean as well. So the depths of the ocean. In tarot, water is the subconscious or the unconscious either. So there's the whole kind of collective conscious where there's all of this knowledge that exists in the ocean that is space, because you talked about dark matter. But in tarot, she would manifest, I would imagine, as a cross between the Empress and, well, the Empress is more Earth, but the High Priestess, so which is all knowing. So the High Priestess actually the high priestess guards the veil. She stands in front of the veil.
Yeah.
And before the veil
there'll be
is
something about you as an individual that is very nurturing or very mothering or likes to kind of create family bonds wherever you are, whatever you do, you know. That's how it kind of comes down to how it manifests in the individual. If you are like more like Papa Legba or the magician or Hermes or Thoth, then you know you're a person who is this great communicator who uses words or uses thought processes in order to push forward different agendas or initiate different things. You know, so these are different ways in how the archetypes flows through the personality
individual
in order to for these individuals to use the tools in order to go and manifest things in their life through the family strong points or archetypes that's running through each individual. So if an individual is in touch with their archetypal ancestor, if you like, then that's an additional advantage doing this spiritual work. Is that kind of sum it up a bit, Ian?
That's really helpful. I just, you know, very often, you know, there's maybe conversations and terminologies that people, when they hear this, they might not know. So I just think it's nice to bring it back to, you know, just basically just, yeah, that's what it was. So thank you for that. It's really helpful because for me, one of the things that included Amashadi on this journey, who's been kind of someone who I visit quite a long time, one of the things that, you know, in terms of ancestry, they were saying, for me, it's funny you said about the caring nature, they were saying that side of it is okay. It's your masculine, do you know what I mean, male energy that needs to come in more. And I'd be like, okay, I'd be really making a point of trying to connect more with the brothers, do you know what I mean? Because, like, you know, ancestry, it's really interesting. So that's why I was asking the question, because obviously it's that journey. How do people, you know, try to navigate and connect with the ancestors? Many people do it in different ways. So for example, one thing I do is I toss coins. Like, I trust so much in the divine. Like, when it comes to the decision that's really intense and really big, I just toss a coin. People think I'm crazy. I'm like, if I trust in the universe, then it's meant to be. And I remember one example when they were running out of time. So I don't know how we're going to wrap this up. I don't know who would like to wrap it up. But I remember I tossed a coin, and I was on a bus. I was walking, and I walked from here, Malden, all the way to central London one night. What? And I was just like, and I kept tossing the coin, going, like, all right, let me get on a bus, go home. And it was like, nah, keep walking. So when I got to central London, I thought, okay, I got to South Bank, I got to the Thames. I thought that was my journey. I thought, okay, it wanted me to connect with the water. It wasn't the water. On the return journey, I met someone who would be considered who has mental health problems. And literally, he was talking about Main Project Gardens. He was talking about Hip Hop Garden. I don't know where this guy came from. He was like, oh, you know, people need to connect with nature and da-da-da. And I just listened to him completely. And he was just breaking down Main Project Gardens and hip hop. I was like, wow. And that's the power of this thing sometimes when you truly let go. I honestly thought that me going to the water was that journey, but it wasn't that. It was to hear someone who was considered to be mentally ill affirm my journey, affirm the mission that I'm on as well. So yeah, that was really powerful. So it's that time, people. I know we're just touching, but I'm very conscious of the fact that we've got to rest and we don't want to give too much away. So I know I'm a party pooper, but
it's been great. It's been good. I think it's been a lovely insight into what all of us have to offer. We don't get a chance to connect often. We're all really busy people, and we're making this project happen, this Come We Grow happen, because we really believe in this work. And I think this has been a really wonderful taster to hear what everybody has to offer. So thank you for this time.
Thank you. And I think you're right. And I'm really sensing more that this work we're doing, that normally we've been outward facing with, like trying to get lots of people in the space. but actually maybe this is a chance for us to do the inward work and support each other and build each other up. That's what I'm feeling more. So, you know, maybe we might not have the numbers that we're anticipating, but that's good because we're building our strength and we're healing, we're doing the work that we need to do. So yeah, thank you for that. Thank you all. Blessings.
Yeah, so
Nice.
just look forward to basically next week on the 31st at Katakata, where we will be doing various workshops where we're connecting with our ancestors, and then later on we'll be doing some tarot and some astrology readings after the workshops.
We'll start at 1 p.m. and 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, we'll see how it goes. But yeah, so definitely check out the website, which is over to Zena very quickly. It's on mayproject.org. It's linked to, so just click on Come We Grow and it will come up with the website. And there's the Facebook pages, there's the Instagram, there's lots of, please spread the word. Even if you can't make it, do spread the word, because as we said, you know, fifth dimension, this work can be transferred in many different ways as well.
Okay.
Thank you very much, everyone, for sharing.
Give thanks, man. Definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marcia. Blessings.